How you doing? I know. I know. Anyway, so we're looking at Fractured Fairy Tales Part 2 today. Yesterday, you guys looked at what a fractured fairy tale was. Today, we're going to finish our basics by looking at a point of view refresher as well as a setting refresher. So why do we even care about point of view and setting right now? That's because when we look at what fractured fairy tales are, it's going to be something that we change about the story. Usually, we're going to change where or when the story takes place, or we're going to change who's telling the story. So we need to do a refresher for that reason. Let me go ahead and go to our slide. There we go. All right, so point of view refresher. There are lots of different types of points of view, right? First, second, and third person. So first person is super easy. That means your story is told from somebody that's using the words like I, me, our, we. The Hunger Games is told from Katniss Everdeen's perspective. She's the one who's telling the story. She's the narrator. That's first person. Second person is going to be an author that's talking to you. So a lot of people that are writing papers or news articles to try to convince you that you should see things the way they do, they're writing in second person or talking in second person. So they're saying, you know, when you wake up and you have really bad breath, why don't you try Colgate Plus? I sound like an ad. That's second person when the author narrator is talking to you. Third person is going to be what most of our stories are written in. So for example, Harry Potter is written in third person. You're not ever going to see the main character saying I or me. The story is going to be told from somebody else that's looking in on that story and on those characters. So Harry did this. Then he went to Diagon Alley. Then he traveled on the train to Hogwarts. Spoiler alert. So we have first person, second person, and third person. You guys don't need to commit this to memory, but third person is a little bit complicated. So if we go back here and we look at third person, there are a couple different ways that you could choose to do third person. You could be a third person where you are the narrator and you can see in everybody's heads and tell us what everybody is thinking and feeling. Or you can be the narrator that really just mostly sees through one character's point of view. So let's look at this through Harry Potter, for example. Even if you haven't seen it or read it, that's okay. So we have third person omniscient and third person limited. If you break this down using our word within a word stuff, omni means all. So like an omnivore eats all the things, right? Shent means seeing. So omni and shent or omniscient is how you say it all together, omniscient. This is going to be a narrator that's using things like he, she, they, but they're going to see into everybody's heads. This person could tell us how Harry's feeling, what Hermione's thinking, what Hagrid's off doing and thinking about that. They can see into all these characters' heads and tell us about it. Third person limited is exactly what it sounds like. It means that our perspective is limited to just one or maybe two main characters. So Harry Potter is actually omniscient because we can see what a lot of people are thinking. Limited would be if we could only see what Harry was thinking. In some of her books, not going to lie, some of them are a little bit third person limited. But because we can see into Dudley's head and Hermione's head and their feelings, it makes it omniscient. So let's see. Of course, you know, I can't think of an example right off the top of my head, but limited is where you just basically are looking out through one person's main, like through their eyes. Hunger Games is first person because Katniss uses words like I or me. But if we had a narrator instead talking about Katniss as the main character, and that was the only character we saw in her head, that would be limited. So why do we even care? Why even talk about this? Why do we care about point of view? So these pictures kind of give you some hints. I'll let you guys kind of process these pictures for a minute. Oh, yeah, middle school teacher didn't see the 69 thing until just now. Laugh it up. Anyway, the point is that they see two different numbers, right? And neither one is actually wrong. Same thing with this boat and land. Same thing with glass is half full or the glass is half empty. Point of view changes everything. So we care about point of view because it influences the entire plot. Just think about the difference between Sleeping Beauty and Maleficent. It also is going to affect what type of information we actually get and how much information we get. If we tell the story of Mulan from Mushu's perspective, we're not going to see anything about Mulan's upbringing or the dynamic with her family. We're just going to see Mulan's story from when Mushu wakes up, right? So it's really going to affect what information and how much we get. I want you guys to think also, what happens when we change the point of view to somebody completely different than the main character? What would happen if we told a story from the villain's point of view? Usually villains are the heroes of their own story. So if you tell the story of the Lion King from Scar's perspective, he doesn't think he's an evil guy going around. He thinks that he's doing what is right because he's after power. What happens if you tell it from the pet's point of view? Hey, hey, the chicken in Moana, what would happen if you tell it from Hey, hey's perspective? Hey, hey's not really, like all there. So the Hey, hey story would probably be pretty short. What if somebody was just a bystander? They were just watching things going on. So you tell the story of Harry Potter from just a random witch or wizard's point of view or a random student's point of view. Or what if you tell the story from the point of view of like the best friend? If any of you guys have seen Sherlock, the story, instead of being told by Sherlock Holmes, is actually told by his sidekick Watson. So the point of view changes a lot. So I want you guys to think about some what if questions here. You can fill in your own blanks, or we can just talk about these. So what if the story of Hansel and Gretel was told by the witch instead of the kids, and she was the actual hero? Maybe she thinks the kids are evil. That changes the whole story, right? What if Moana was told by Hey Hey? What if Moana was told by Maui? What would he have to say about things? What if Avengers was, instead of having Spider-Man or Iron Man as the main character, what if the Avengers was told by one of the villains? What if the horror movie The Shining, instead of being told from the point of view of like the little boy or the dad, what if it was told from the hotel's point of view? It's about a haunted hotel. It's totally alive. It's terrifying. But what if we told the horror movie from the monster's point of view? That would change our whole story. All right, so that's it for point of view refresher. Let's look at a setting refresher now. I know you guys know what setting is, but I want to look at why we care about it. So setting, a lot of people think of it as just the place. It is not just a place. Setting is the time, the place, and the environment in which the story takes place. So the setting, Egypt could be a setting. The time matters. Are we talking like ancient Egypt? Are we talking like 1940s Egypt? Are we talking like modern day Egypt? So setting needs to include a time and a place. Environment could mean maybe there's a plague going on. Environment can mean maybe it's in the middle of a war, or maybe it's in a time of great difficulty, of poverty, or the Dust Bowl, or ancient Greece when a certain people was being like oppressed. So the environment and setting can include what the weather's doing. It can include social statuses. It can include their immediate surroundings. So for example, let's see, the story of Moana the setting is huge. It spans the islands, it spans the ocean, it spans Te Fiti's home. Or you could have a story that takes place in a much smaller setting, like Cinderella just happens in one kingdom. The setting is mostly her house and the palace, and that's it. Maybe a little bit in between there. That's really it, right? So some settings are small, some settings are really big. It just depends on your story. What about the geographic location? Does it happen in the mountains? Does it happen in the woods? Does it happen under the sea, like The Little Mermaid? And also you need to look at the historical time and culture, if it's a more realistic story or a historical fiction story. So does it take place in London in the 1840s, or does it take place in ancient Samaria? Who knows? So why do we really care about setting? Does the setting actually influence the characters? Well, yeah, because it's going to influence the entire plot. So your setting affects your character's beliefs, and it affects your character's motivations. So let's say that I'm living in war-torn China. My values are probably, depending on who I am, I might value honor. If I'm a guy, if I'm a woman and I've lost my husband, my values might be for peace, right? Your setting influences your values. If you grow up in today's world with coronavirus versus 5 years ago, your values about staying healthy and taking care of your family, has totally changed, right? Our setting affects our values. It affects our beliefs as well. Somebody that grows up in India is probably going to have a Hindu system of belief. Somebody that grows up in America is more likely to have a Christian set of beliefs, right? So setting influences your values and beliefs. It also affects what characters want in life. In America, we tend to want freedom. We tend to want to achieve the dream, right? In other countries, they might mostly just want a family. Or maybe if they're living in a third world country, maybe they just mostly want to make sure food is on the table, right? So the setting greatly affects what they strive for and their dreams and their motives. It also is going to influence the worldview. of the characters. Your worldview is how you perceive the world. Is the world a dangerous place because you grew up in war-torn China? Or is the world yours for the taking because you grew up in the 1920s in America? Or is the world hopeless because you grew up in, maybe you grew up in Germany right at the end of World War II, where everything just looked terrible for you. So that affects your whole perspective on life. So let's look at some of these and change some of the settings. So Hansel and Gretel, let's use that story again. What if Hansel and Gretel took place, instead of in fairy tale land in the forest, what if instead it takes place in space, in the future? So you still have the same story, but the breadcrumbs they'd have to leave would be different. The witch might be an alien instead, right? What if Moana takes place in present day, in a city, and Maui is a cop, and Moana's got to figure out what's going wrong with her town, and she's got to be the hero and save the day, right? So what if it takes place modern day in a city and she's a cop? Avengers, what if Avengers took place, like you guys can fill in the blanks here. What if Avengers took place in ancient Egypt or in ancient Greece? What if the horror movie The Shining, instead of taking place in the hotel, which is almost a character in and of itself in the movie, what if The Shining took place under the sea? Or what if The Shining took place in a haunted hospital instead? Changes your story, and it's going to change the characters too. That's the most important thing you realize, is that changing the setting doesn't just change the story. It's going to change your characters' values, beliefs, and worldview. So the next part of what we are going to do, you guys are going to do this, putting it all together with some examples on your own as part of our Jamboard reflection today. FYI, our Jamboard, our reflection today, oh, sorry, not Jamboard, Padlet. Our Padlet today and our reflection is for a grade, so please make sure that you are participating and using your name on your entries. All right, guys, I will see you later. See you on the reflection. Bye.